There's a distinct sound to a life being shattered. It's not the dramatic crash of breaking glass or the thunderous boom of an explosion. It's the soft, almost imperceptible shuffle of papers sliding across a polished conference table, the gentle tap of a folder being set down, the quiet clearing of a throat before words are spoken that will irrevocably alter your existence. Morgan, we've decided to move in a different direction. That's how 11 years of dedication ended for me. 11 years at Nexus Logistics, watching the company grow from a scrappy startup to an industry leader. 11 years of missed birthdays, canceled vacations, and midnight coding sessions. 11 years of my life poured into algorithms and systems that now ran seamlessly in the background, invisible but essential, just like I had become. I stared at Harrison Reed, the new CEO, his face a mask of practiced sympathy that didn't reach his eyes. Beside him sat his son, Ethan Reed, barely 30 with that particular brand of arrogance that comes from never having earned anything. My direct manager, Alexis, was there too, eyes fixed on the table, avoiding my gaze like the coward she was. "You're just not adapting to our new direction," Harrison continued. "We need fresh perspectives, innovative approaches. The logistics industry is changing rapidly." The irony wasn't lost on me. I had just completed the Transit Core project, a routing algorithm so efficient it had cut delivery times by 18% across the board. But apparently, my outdated methods weren't what Nexus wanted anymore. "We'll provide a generous severance package," Harrison was saying, sliding a folder across the table. 2 months' salary plus unused vacation time. I remained silent, my fingers pressed against the cool surface of the conference table. The room felt both claustrophobic and impossibly vast. My heartbeat pounded in my ears, drowning out Harrison's rehearsed platitudes about contributions and valued service. Ethan couldn't even bother to hide his smirk. He leaned back in his chair, idly tapping on his phone, half listening to the conversation that was dismantling my career. "Is there anything you'd like to say, Morgan?" Alexis finally looked up, her voice gentle in a way that made me nauseous. I met her gaze steadily. "How long has this been planned?" A flicker of discomfort crossed her face. "This isn't about planning, Morgan. It's about the needs of the company moving forward." I nodded slowly, my mind already racing beyond this moment. "I see. When do you need me out?" "Today would be best," Harrison replied, relief evident in his tone. He probably expected tears, rage, or desperate pleading. "It will monitor as you collect your personal items. Standard procedure." "Of course," I said, rising from my chair with a composure I didn't feel. "I wouldn't want to compromise company security." The sarcasm was lost on him, but Ethan's smirk widened slightly. As I turned to leave, he finally spoke. "Don't worry, Morgan. We've already found someone to take over your projects. Transition will be seamless." That's when I knew this wasn't about my performance or the company's new direction. This was something else entirely. I nodded curtly and walked out, an IT security specialist named Ryan trailing awkwardly behind me. My colleagues averted their eyes as I passed, the news having spread through the office with the efficiency of a well-designed algorithm. At my desk, I methodically collected my few personal items. A small plant sachet from accounting had given me, a framed certificate from a coding competition, a coffee mug with code like a girl emblazoned on it. 11 years reduced to a single cardboard box. Ryan hovered nearby, clearly uncomfortable. "I need to supervise your computer access," he mumbled. "I understand," I replied, sitting down at my desk one last time. My fingers moved across the keyboard, opening folders, closing projects. To Ryan, it looked like I was simply closing out my work and logging off. But in those few minutes, I did something that would change everything. I had designed much of Nexus's logistics system. The routing algorithms, the inventory management interface, the client portal, all bore my fingerprints. And I knew something that Harrison, Ethan, and Alexis didn't seem to grasp. I had built watermarks into my code. Invisible timestamps, coded signatures embedded within the architecture itself. Every piece of work I'd created over 11 years was marked as mine. As I prepared to log off for the final time, I quietly exported the GitHub repository containing my work to an external drive. Not to steal, I wasn't a thief, but to protect what was rightfully mine. I knew what was coming. Someone else would take credit for my work, would claim my innovations as their own. I wasn't going to let that happen. All done, I announced, standing up and collecting my box. Ryan escorted me to the front entrance, mumbling an awkward, "good luck," before swiping his badge to let me out. The glass doors of Nexus Logistics closed behind me with a soft, definitive click. I stood on the sidewalk, the afternoon sun warm on my face, a strange numbness spreading through my chest. 11 years of my life ended in less than an hour. But this wasn't the end of my story. It was merely the beginning of another one, a story of calculated retribution that would unfold with the precision of the very algorithms I had designed. I woke the next morning with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The initial shock had given way to a cold, focused rage. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and began plotting my next steps with methodical precision. First, I needed to know exactly what had happened. I still had contacts within Nexus, people who might be willing to share information. I sent a casual text to Sasha from accounting, asking if she'd like to meet for coffee. Her response came almost immediately, of course. Riverside Cafe at 11. The cafe was quiet when I arrived, tucked away from the corporate district. Sasha was already there, nervously stirring her latte. Her face brightened when she saw me, then immediately fell into an expression of concern. "Morgan, I'm so sorry. I can't believe they did that to you." I slid into the seat across from her. "Thanks, Sasha. I'm still processing it." She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "It's complete bullshit. Everyone knows it. The Transit Corps project was revolutionary and they fire you a week after implementation. It makes no sense." "Unless it makes perfect sense," I replied, watching her carefully. "Do you know who they've brought in to replace me?" Sasha hesitated, then sighed. "That's the other thing that has everyone talking. They've already hired someone, Owen. He's a friend of Ethan's from college. Started yesterday, right after you left." A cold certainty settled in my stomach. "How qualified is he?" "He has some background in logistics software, but nothing like your experience. The rumor is that Ethan has been pushing his dad to hire Owen for months." "Months," I repeated, the timeline slotting into place. "So this was planned well before the Transit Corps project was completed." Sasha nodded, regret in her eyes. "There's more. I shouldn't be telling you this, but I was helping Alexis with some expense reports and saw her Slack open on her computer. There were messages between her and Ethan from at least 6 weeks ago discussing your replacement. They were just waiting for you to finish Transit Corps before letting you go." The betrayal burned, but I kept my expression neutral. "That's interesting timing." "Morgan, it's worse than that. Owen's been given full access to all your projects. He's already presenting them as if he understands the architecture. Yesterday, in a meeting with the executive team, he took credit for some of the improvements in Transit Corps." I took a sip of my coffee, letting the information settle. "And how's that working out for him?" Sasha gave a small, vindictive smile. "Not great. He couldn't answer basic questions about the algorithm. Devin Lin from the tech team tried to ask him about the routing optimization parameters, and he completely fumbled it." Devin Lin? I filed the name away for future reference. The CTO of Nexus had always been fair, if distant. "So they've hired someone unqualified to manage systems they don't understand," I summarized. "That seems like a recipe for disaster." "It's only a matter of time before something breaks," Sasha agreed. "And when it does, they'll realize what they've lost." We chatted a while longer, Sasha filling me in on office gossip and expressing outrage on my behalf. As we parted, she hugged me tightly. "What will you do now?" she asked. I smiled, the beginnings of a plan taking shape. "I'm going to take some time to consider my options, and then I'm going to make sure I get exactly what I deserve." The next week was a flurry of activity. I refreshed my resume, reached out to industry contacts, and began applying for positions at companies that competed directly with Nexus Logistics. I knew my value, and I wasn't going to undersell myself. 3 days after my termination, I received a call from a recruiter representing Quantum Systems, one of Nexus's main competitors. "Your credentials are impressive, Ms. Taylor," the recruiter said. "Particularly your work on routing optimization. Quantum is very interested in meeting with you." I smiled to myself. I'd be happy to discuss opportunities with them. The interview was scheduled for the following day at an upscale restaurant. I dressed carefully, a sharp navy suit that projected confidence and expertise. When I arrived, I was shown to a private dining room where a woman was already seated. She stood as I entered, extending her hand. "Morgan Taylor, I'm Layla Chen, Chief Innovation Officer at Quantum Systems. It's a pleasure to meet you." Layla was everything Nexus's leadership wasn't: sharp, technical, and genuinely interested in innovation. Over a leisurely dinner, she asked detailed questions about my work, my approach to problem solving, and my vision for the future of logistics technology. "Your transit core algorithm is quite remarkable," she said toward the end of the meal. "That 18% efficiency improvement has the entire industry talking." I raised an eyebrow. "You know about that?" She smiled. "Of course. Your name is still on the commit history in GitHub, at least in the earlier versions, before someone tried to scrub it recently." I kept my expression neutral. "Interesting." "Morgan, let me be direct. We know you built that system. We know Nexus let you go immediately after implementation, and we suspect we know why." She leaned forward. "We want you at Quantum, not just for your technical skills, but for your vision. We're prepared to offer you a position as Director of Advanced Logistics Solutions with a substantial increase in salary and a team of your own." The offer was unexpected in its generosity. "That's very flattering," I said carefully. "It's not flattery, it's business. Nexus made a critical error in letting you go, and we intend to capitalize on it." She slid a folder across the table. "This is our formal offer. Take a few days to consider it, but know that we're eager to have you join us as soon as possible." As I left the restaurant, offer in hand, my phone buzzed with a text from Sasha. "Systems down. Owen can't figure out why. Clients furious. Ethan blaming IT infrastructure." I smiled to myself. I hadn't sabotaged anything. I didn't need to. The system was complex, with interconnected components that required careful maintenance and understanding. Owen, with his limited experience, was bound to make mistakes, and without me there to fix them, those mistakes would compound. The next day, I accepted Quantum's offer. My first day was scheduled for the following Monday, giving me a weekend to prepare for the next phase of my plan. On Sunday evening, Sasha called me in a state of barely contained glee. "You won't believe what happened," she said, her voice hushed despite being at home. "The transit core system completely crashed on Friday afternoon. The routing algorithms went haywire, sending delivery trucks in completely inefficient paths. Some customers had deliveries delayed by hours." "That sounds problematic," I remarked, keeping my tone neutral. "Problematic? It's a disaster. They've been working all weekend trying to fix it. Owen claims he understands the system, but everything he tries just makes it worse. Devon finally stepped in and managed to get a basic version running again, but it's nowhere near as efficient as what you built." I allowed myself a small smile. Systems like that require proper understanding to maintain. It's unfortunate they didn't consider that when making personnel changes. "Morgan, there's more," Sasha continued. "Ethan is furious. He's blaming Owen publicly now, saying he misrepresented his qualifications. But privately, he's also blaming Alexis for not ensuring a proper knowledge transfer before you left." "That would have been difficult, considering I was escorted out the same day I was informed of my termination," I pointed out. "Exactly. It's complete chaos. Harrison is now asking if there's any way to bring you back as a consultant to fix the system." This was unexpected, but not unwelcome. And what did people say to that suggestion? "Devon pointed out that you've likely already been approached by competitors. He said they'd be lucky if you agreed to help at all, and it would probably cost them considerably more than what they were paying you before." "Smart man Devon. He's not wrong," I said. "So would you help them, I mean?" I considered the question carefully. For the right terms, I might consider it, but those terms would need to be very favorable. After hanging up with Sasha, I sat back and thought about the situation. Nexus was now experiencing the consequences of their decision, but this was just the beginning. My plan was coming together faster than I had anticipated. The next morning, I started at Quantum Systems. Layla introduced me to my new team, showed me to a spacious office, and outlined my first project: developing a next-generation logistics platform to compete directly with Nexus's offerings. "We want something revolutionary," she explained. "Something that makes Transit Core look like a prototype." I smiled. "I think I can manage that." By the end of my first week at Quantum, I had drafted the architecture for a new system I called Pulse Flow. It incorporated everything I had learned from Transit Core, but with significant improvements and innovations I had been wanting to implement for years. Meanwhile, Sasha kept me updated on the situation at Nexus. The Transit Core issues had continued, with patches failing and clients threatening to move their business elsewhere. Devon had managed to stabilize the basic functionality, but the advanced features, the ones that had made the system truly revolutionary, remained broken. Harrison is in panic mode, Sasha reported. 3 major clients have already given notice that they're looking at other options, and the board is asking questions about why the star developer of their flagship product was terminated right after delivery. It was all unfolding exactly as I had anticipated, but I wasn't done yet. 3 weeks into my new position at Quantum, I was called into a meeting with Layla and the company's legal team. "We've been monitoring the situation at Nexus," Layla began, "and our legal department has some concerns about the work you're doing here." I tensed but kept my expression neutral. "What kind of concerns?" "We understand that you developed significant portions of Nexus's systems, including Transit Core. We want to ensure that the work you do for us doesn't infringe on any intellectual property rights." I had been expecting this. "I appreciate the concern," I said carefully, "but I've been very careful not to bring any proprietary code from Nexus to Quantum. The architecture I'm developing for Pulse Flow is entirely new." The head of the legal team, a sharp-eyed woman named Vanessa, leaned forward. "Nevertheless, we'd like to establish a clear record of what you created at Nexus and what you're creating here. Can you help us understand the distinction?" This was my opening. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small flash drive. "This contains the GitHub history for Transit Core and other systems I developed at Nexus," I explained. "What you'll find interesting is that each commit includes embedded watermarks, digital signatures that prove I was the author. I'm not sharing the actual code, just the metadata that establishes provenance." Vanessa took the drive, her expression intrigued. "You watermarked your code." "I've been doing it for years," I explained. "It's a common practice among developers who want to protect their work. The watermarks don't affect functionality, but they do establish who wrote what and when." Layla and Vanessa exchanged glances. "This could be very useful," Vanessa said, "especially if Nexus ever tries to claim that your work for us infringes on their systems." "There's one more thing," I added. "I have reason to believe that Nexus is currently struggling with their systems because the person they hired to replace me doesn't fully understand the architecture. If they attempt to reverse engineer or modify my code without proper understanding, they could potentially compromise the integrity of the watermarks." Layla's eyes narrowed, which would make it even clearer that the original work was yours, not theirs. "Precisely." Vanessa was already making notes. "This gives us some interesting options. Morgan, would you be willing to work with our legal team to document all of this formally? It could provide Quantum with significant protection as we develop Pulse Flow." "I'd be happy to," I replied. As I left the meeting, my phone buzzed with another text from Sasha. "Major client meeting today. System crashed again mid-demo. Ethan blamed Owen publicly. Devon trying to save the situation but looking grim." The pieces were falling into place. It was time for the next phase of my plan. 1 month into my tenure at Quantum, Pulse Flow was taking shape beautifully. I had assembled a talented team who understood my vision and were excited to implement it. The architecture was elegant, the interfaces intuitive, and the performance metrics promising. Meanwhile, Nexus continued to struggle. Sasha reported that 2 more major clients had left, citing reliability concerns with the Transit Core system. Ethan had quietly moved Owen to a less visible role, but the damage was done. "Devon's been asking about you," Sasha mentioned during one of our regular coffee meetings. "He's convinced you're the only one who can fix the system properly. Harrison's finally listening, but they're afraid you won't help them now." "They're right to be concerned," I replied. "My focus is on my new role at Quantum." "That's what I figured," Sasha sighed. "Oh, and something interesting happened yesterday. Devon was reviewing the Transit Core code and found something he called embedded signatures throughout the architecture. He seemed quite impressed." I smiled into my coffee cup. "That does sound interesting." That evening, I received an unexpected email from Devon Lin himself. "Morgan, I hope this finds you well. I've been examining the Transit Core architecture and have found your digital signatures throughout the code. Clever work. I'm impressed. I won't waste your time. Nexus is in trouble, and we both know why. The system you built is failing because no one here truly understands it. I've done what I can, but I'm a CTO, not a development genius like you. I'd like to meet. No commitments, just a conversation. I think there might be a solution that benefits everyone. Devin Lin. I considered the email carefully before responding. Devin, I appreciate your candor. I'm willing to meet, but I should be transparent. I'm now Director of Advanced Logistics Solutions at Quantum Systems, and my primary loyalty is to my new employer. That said, I'm available for coffee this Thursday at 7 p.m. at Ramen House on 5th Street. Morgan Taylor. The meeting was set. I informed Layla about it immediately, not wanting any appearance of impropriety. This could be interesting, she remarked. See what he has to say, but make no commitments without consulting our legal team. Thursday evening arrived, and I found Devin already seated at a corner table in the small ramen restaurant, away from other diners. He stood as I approached, extending his hand. Morgan, thank you for coming. You're looking well. New job agrees with me, I replied, taking a seat across from him. He smiled ruefully. I can imagine. I won't pretend. Nexus made a catastrophic error in letting you go. The question is whether we can find a way to mitigate the damage. That depends on what you're proposing, I said, keeping my tone neutral. Devin leaned forward. I'll be direct. Transit Core is failing. The patches aren't holding, clients are leaving, and the board is asking hard questions. Harrison and Ethan are finally realizing what they've lost. And what exactly do they think they've lost? You, Devin said simply. Your expertise, your vision, your understanding of systems that are now critical to Nexus's survival. I allowed a small smile. That's flattering, but I'm quite happy at Quantum. I'm not suggesting you leave Quantum, Devin clarified. I'm suggesting a licensing arrangement. This caught my attention. Go on. I've examined the code thoroughly, Morgan. Your watermarks are throughout the system. Brilliant work, by the way. It's clear that you were the primary architect of Transit Core and several other key systems. What I'm proposing is that Nexus license the intellectual property from you personally. I raised an eyebrow. The intellectual property that Nexus claims belongs to them. That's where it gets interesting, Devin continued. Your employment contract stated that work done in the scope of your employment belongs to Nexus. But there's a gray area. The watermarking code itself, the mechanism you used to sign your work, that wasn't done at Nexus's direction or for their benefit. It was something you implemented independently. True, I acknowledged. So here's what I'm thinking. Nexus licenses the right to use and modify your watermarked code, with you providing consultation on how to properly maintain the systems. In exchange, you receive substantial compensation and public acknowledgement as the primary creator of Transit Core. I considered his proposal. It was clever, a way for Nexus to save face while still giving me what I wanted. What's in this for you, Devin? I asked. He smiled wryly. Stability, a working system, my job, potentially. The board isn't happy with the current leadership after this fiasco, and if I'm honest, a bit of satisfaction. I warned Harrison against firing you, but Ethan was quite persuasive. I'll need to discuss this with Quantum's legal team, I said. Any arrangement would need their approval to avoid conflicts of interest. Of course, Devin nodded. Take all the time you need. But Morgan, one more thing, the longer this drags on, the worse it gets for Nexus. We've already lost several major clients. If this continues, there might not be much of a company left to license anything from. I nodded, understanding the implied time pressure. I'll get back to you within the week. As we parted, Devin handed me a small flash drive. Some data that might be relevant to your decision. Nothing proprietary, just performance metrics and client impact reports since your departure. I took it, curious about what it might contain. Back home, I plugged in the drive and found it contained exactly what Devin had described. Detailed reports showing the degradation of the Transit Core system since my departure. Client complaints, performance failures, error logs, all meticulously documented. But there was something else, a folder labeled Board Communications. Inside were email exchanges between Devin, Harrison, and various board members discussing the Transit Core failure and its causes. One email from Devon to the board particularly caught my attention. As I've previously stated, the decision to terminate Morgan Taylor immediately after the Transit Corps implementation was catastrophically misguided. Ms. Taylor was the principal architect of a system that has now become central to our operations. Her replacement, hired primarily due to his connection to Ethan Reed, lacks the expertise to maintain the system properly. More concerning is the discovery of embedded digital signatures throughout the codebase, clearly establishing Ms. Taylor as the author. These signatures could potentially be used to challenge our exclusive ownership of the intellectual property, especially given the circumstances of her termination. I recommend immediate steps to rectify this situation, including approaching Ms. Taylor with a generous consulting offer and public acknowledgement of her contributions. Devon had been advocating for me behind the scenes. This changed things, not my ultimate goal, but perhaps my approach. The next day, I met with Layla and Quantum's legal team to discuss Devon's proposal. "It's an interesting opportunity," Vanessa said after I explained the situation. "Quantum has no objection to you licensing your intellectual property to Nexus, as long as it doesn't conflict with your work here. The real question," Layla added, "is what terms you want to demand. This gives you significant leverage." I thought carefully. I want three things: substantial financial compensation for the license, public acknowledgement of my role in creating Transit Corps, and some structural changes at Nexus to ensure this kind of situation doesn't happen to other developers. Vanessa nodded. "All reasonable demands. Let's draft a proposal." 1 week later, I met Devon again, this time in Quantum's conference room with both companies' legal teams present. I presented our terms. 1. A licensing fee of $2.5 million for the right to continue using and modifying the Transit Corps system. 2. A public statement acknowledging me as the primary architect of Transit Corps and several other key systems. 3. The establishment of a proper attribution system for all developers at Nexus, ensuring their contributions were recognized. 4. The removal of Ethan Reed from any position with authority over technical personnel. Devon reviewed the terms carefully. The financial terms are steep but defensible given the situation. The public acknowledgement is reasonable. The attribution system is something we should have implemented years ago. The final condition, however, is non-negotiable, I finished for him. Ethan Reed engineered my termination to place his friend in my position, causing significant damage to Nexus in the process. His continued involvement in personnel decisions represents an ongoing risk. Devon sighed. "I don't disagree, but I'm not sure I have the authority to agree to that condition." "Then I suggest you obtain that authority," I replied calmly, "because without it there's no deal." The negotiations continued for another 2 hours, with various compromises proposed and rejected. Finally, Devon asked for a brief recess to make a phone call. When he returned, his expression was carefully neutral. "We have approval for all terms with one modification. Ethan Reed will be transferred to our international division, away from any technical oversight rather than terminated. Does that satisfy your concerns?" I considered this. As long as he has no authority over technical personnel or projects, yes. "Then we have a deal." Devon extended his hand. The contracts were drawn up and signed that same day. As part of the agreement, Harrison Reed would issue a public statement acknowledging my contributions and announcing the licensing arrangement. As we concluded the meeting, Devon pulled me aside. "This isn't how I wanted things to work out, Morgan. For what it's worth, I argued against your termination from the beginning." "I know," I replied. "I saw the emails." He raised an eyebrow. "The flash drive, I wondered if you'd find those." "It influenced my decision," I admitted. "Otherwise, my terms might have been considerably less generous." Devon chuckled. "Remind me never to get on your bad side, so what's next for you?" "I continue building something better at Quantum," I said simply. "Pulse flow will make Transit Corps look obsolete within a year." He nodded. "I don't doubt it. Good luck, Morgan." The following week, Harrison Reed held a press conference announcing the licensing agreement. Standing at the podium, looking considerably less confident than the last time I had seen him, he read from a prepared statement. "Nexus Logistics acknowledges Morgan Taylor as the primary architect of our Transit Corps system and several other key technological innovations. We are pleased to announce a licensing agreement that allows us to continue benefiting from Ms. Taylor's groundbreaking work while properly recognizing her contributions. The business press picked up the story immediately, with headlines like "Tech Giant Pays Millions to Former Employee for Code Rights," and "Nexus Admits Error in Firing Star Developer." Sasha sent me a text with a link to one of the articles. "You did it. Office is in shock. Ethan cleaned out his desk yesterday, heading to London office. Alexis announced early retirement this morning." I smiled at that. Justice had been served one way or another. The licensing money went into a fund I established to help other developers who had been pushed out of their positions unfairly. I called it the Code Credit Initiative, focusing on providing legal support and career rehabilitation for tech workers whose contributions had been minimized or stolen. Meanwhile, PulseFlow development accelerated at Quantum. 6 months after leaving Nexus, we launched the beta version to select clients. The efficiency improvements made Transit Core look like a prototype, just as Layla had requested. Within a year, we had captured 40% of Nexus's former client base. But the most satisfying moment came 18 months after my termination, when I was invited to give a TEDx talk titled "Coding Your Value: Digital Watermarks and Intellectual Property in the Tech Industry." The talk detailed my experience at Nexus, without naming the company directly, explained the importance of developers protecting their work, and introduced the Code Credit Initiative. The talk went viral within the tech community, spawning a movement of developers implementing their own watermarking systems. I received hundreds of messages from people sharing similar stories and thanking me for standing up for proper attribution. As I expanded my team at Quantum, I made sure to implement a rigorous attribution system, ensuring that every developer's contributions were recognized and rewarded. The culture we built was one of transparency, respect, and innovation, everything that had been lacking in my final days at Nexus. Occasionally, I heard updates about my former employer. Nexus had stabilized somewhat after implementing my licensing agreement, but they never regained their former market position. Devin had been promoted to CEO after Harrison's early retirement and was slowly rebuilding the company's reputation. He sent me an email on the anniversary of our licensing agreement. "Morgan, just a note to say that the attribution system is working well. We've retained more talent in the past year than in the previous 3 combined. Your legacy here extends beyond code. You've changed how we value our people. If you ever want to grab ramen again, let me know. Devin." I smiled as I read it, feeling a sense of closure. My revenge had not been about destroying Nexus, but about claiming what was rightfully mine: recognition for my work, compensation for my innovations, and respect for my expertise. In the end, I had got everything I wanted and more. My career was thriving, my innovations were recognized, and I had created a support system for others who might face similar situations. The best revenge, I discovered, wasn't about burning everything to the ground. It was about building something better from the ashes and making sure everyone knew exactly who had done the building.